Welcome to the Self-Storage Lab, where we deconstruct how operators are adapting to today's technology-driven landscape and how it might impact your business. Hoping to stand out in this competitive landscape and focus inwardly on improving operational efficiency, operators are looking to the integration of innovative technology and the inclusion of customer-centric amenities within their facilities. Today's episode will be part 2 of 3, where we'll touch on the state of technology being utilized today throughout the industry. We'll start by breaking down the different tools available to operators, big and small, to help run their day-to-day, plus how automation can make you a better operator. If you haven't already, go download the second edition of our industry report, The State of Technology in Self-Storage. We cover a ton of data points focused on how operators should think about putting the modern customer at the center of their universe. We also unpack over 2 million conversations with customers in the past year. We think you'll really like it. Let's dig in.
If you're a longtime listener, you may notice we have a new voice on the podcast. We'd like to introduce Jenna, our senior conversation analyst. What would you say you do here, Jenna?
Great question. Well, first of all, thank you guys for having me. I would say I wear a few different hats, but number one, the one I'm most passionate about is, improving our analytics, tracking our customers' customer journey in our chat and other channels. And I'm sure some of you may already know me if you receive my monthly analytics reports. Some really beautiful charts in there, just helping our operators understand how their chats are doing.
Nice. So Jenna's going to come in. She really knows a lot of this data really well, and so she's here to kind of support us on that.
I'm really excited to have Jenna on board.
I am too.
Today.
Well, just in general on the Swivel team for one,
for sure,
but also on the podcast.
Welcome to the pod, Jenna. It's going to be fun to get somebody else's voice in here besides the three guys.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
So we're talking a lot about our second section of the State of Technology report today, kind of focusing on the tools and systems to essentially run a self-storage operation. So, looking back at 2023, I'm really curious from y'all's perspective, kind of what was top of mind for most of the operators last year as they relate to technology. And maybe we can start like that and then dive into how we separate the main technology stack of an operator. Does anyone want to go first?
Yeah, I think something that's always top of mind is the digital storefront, which is typically your website. And this actually happens to be our second most listened episode on the podcast. So if you haven't listened to that, go check that one out. But, you've got your physical storefront, but so many people are shopping digitally these days. And I think one of the big pieces of data here is that mobile is king. And so the transition from someone getting on their desktop or their laptop, pulling it up, shopping for storage, has definitely shifted over towards mobile. So mobile phones, less so tablets, but people are on the go. They are always on their phones. And so we're seeing, there's it's a 65% split between mobile and desktop. So mobile 65% and desktops 35%. And that trend has been growing. I think if you looked at it like a decade ago, it might have been 50-50. It's at 65% now, and I think it's only going to continue to grow. And so I think it's very important to realize that both potential and existing customers are definitely on their mobile devices. And so your storefront and your experience has to be able to cater to that.
I also see, to that point, we talked about it a little bit in that last episode of kind of that modern customer, right? And we can go back to the data. obviously smartphones have been ruling the game for the last decade or probably even more now, but operators are now encountering a much younger buyer or renter, and so they were essentially raised online, and the generation that's coming next is already definitely going to be being raised with iPads, mobile phones, and now AI, which is going to be a whole different thing in the next decade. So it makes sense. Like looking back at our data, 65%. So overall, mobile is reigning king right now. And I think from my perspective, talking to operators, this last year, I saw, obviously there's a distinction of, I don't know how to kind of break this down really, but kind of like the younger operators themselves that are more tech savvy, that I've been talking to a lot of people coming from outside the industry with a background in tech or e-commerce or marketing, where they kind of are savvier about the customer journey in general, right? And how to think about that versus operators that have been in the game for much longer. Obviously, they have a lot going for them, but they're more used to more of the kind of offline sources of getting new customers in, et cetera. And so it's been interesting to see how certain operators have been implementing and merging some of the physical and digital touch points to reach the customers or prospective customers. I know, but I'm not going to say it.
Yeah,
I'm not going to say it.
You want to say it.
I'm not going to say it. We'll leave it till later. And essentially what I'm trying to say is, like, people are understanding that you need multiple touch points to reach somebody online. And it's been interesting to kind of see across that journey of trying to get somebody's attention, to getting them to your site to book, and then that post reservation experience. This all comes into play whenever you're thinking about your online presence. So it's become more robust than I think operators from the old guard kind of were comfortable with.
Yeah, I think my takeaway from kind of synopsis of like the last 12 months has been experimentation and exploration. And what I mean by that is, we're seeing people explore drones. We're seeing people start to experiment with Bluetooth technology as a locking mechanism. We're looking at more and more operators exploring and experimenting with value-based pricing or dynamic pricing, right? These are just areas that I think you're starting to see people on the edge try new things, right? There's kind of your tried and true tech that is needed, the website, your marketing. I think for years, people have understood how important, Google My Business is to driving customers and ratings and reviews. But we're looking at different ways to start to differentiate, build a competitive advantage against somebody down the street. And so I would just say that that's kind of the theme, I think, is like you're seeing a lot of different things in the kind of the peripheral. And it'll be really interesting over the next, 12, 18, 24 months to see which ones of those take off a lot. Do you really need a drone to keep your facilities secure? Or, is AI cameras or just your camera-based system with an AI backend that's able to analyze it good enough? And so I think those are interesting, right? Like I stored a lot of facilities in the past and even today that have like traditional keypads, right? You go up, you've got your little number pad, you put in, your 6-digit passcode, you get in the doors. Like, is that going to change? Like as a modern consumer myself, like I'd love to just walk up to the thing and walk in, right? And it recognizes via some like digital wallet or some digital key that I have access and I should be there. I think we're going to start to see experimentation around a lot of that. You're seeing operators experiment with not just kiosk, but expanding what the kiosk means. And so I think that's kind of the trend that I've gotten, is just a lot of exploration and experimentation right now.
I think what I've seen and what I've heard from our customers is just the importance of meeting their customer wherever they're at, or whatever channel they want to be communicating in. So whether that be, I hate to say it, old school email, or through a text message, maybe they want to pick up the phone and talk to somebody. I was looking into the different social media platforms and how they kind of rank and play in the self-storage industry. And, just doing simple Google searches, I'm seeing that the REITs have Instagram, X, and Facebook accounts, but the difference in the number of followers is pretty significant. I mean, Instagram, we're seeing tens of thousands of followers. X is maybe a couple of thousand, and then Facebook down in the hundreds. And so I think that just reaffirms what you were saying, Rudy, or Rodolfo, that that we're seeing a younger generation being more involved in the industry.
I like that. I have heard like the omni-channel becoming more and more something that people are focused on in conversations that we have. It's interesting because my gut says that Facebook would be the one that's like the most natural. And so for that to be kind of the least utilized channel, at least from a follower count today, is interesting, because I don't really know what kind of Instagram, brand building you're doing, right? Like I've seen some stuff on Threads regarding like people living in storage units, but I don't know that that's necessarily like building a brand or creating awareness around something that people want. So Instagram's a really interesting one to have ranked from such a high follower count there. I don't know if does anybody else have like a sense from like just talking to operators which one of those social channels is like top of mind for them today?
I do have. It's actually outside of the typical ones. Instagram does come in a lot, but one that I wasn't expecting has been Meta's push to use WhatsApp as that channel. I've gone actually over the last, I would say, probably 3 months, a surge of requests, because I'm always wondering, hey, what other channels can we, maybe Sewell can sit on top of and whatnot. And the one that has come the most, Facebook itself, Messenger, people know it. It's fine. Definitely in the US market, some operators in secondary, tertiary markets, etc., like really use it as a front for their online presence. There's reviews, but I've seen a push to start using WhatsApp for a lot of just the mix of international customers that may be in the US, or even whenever I'm speaking to folks in Europe, WhatsApp or Latin America, there's that WhatsApp channel is the number one channel over there.
Yeah, it makes sense.
It's kind of like
even from a business communication perspective, like it's more flexible, right?
Yeah.
RCS hopefully comes in and changes like what the quote unquote SMS channel is able to do from like rich content and media and whatnot. But at least today, like, WhatsApp, for instance, has all of those bells and whistles built in. You can do that. It's not as closed as, say, the Apple iMessage or business message ecosystem. And, it's not Facebook Messenger, which I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but that's like something that I just don't participate in personally, but I know that there is a huge population of people that do. So
I think it's a more direct line. I use WhatsApp. I communicate with my family through WhatsApp and whatnot. Obviously, I'm kind of more on the like A lot of Latin American friends use WhatsApp. It's just something that's been king for a while. I feel like that's why Meta bought it for the first place.
You're one of two conversations in my WhatsApp app.
Yeah.
Rodolfo
we have, I don't know why
else.
We've had a conversation WhatsApp, but it's the same.
I think you're in Italy or something.
Yeah. It's really very similar to SMS, right? It's just now you're in their pocket and now you have a direct line of contact, versus Messenger is more of like an app that you might not pay too much attention to.
So, I mean, I know that that's a big topic that we dive into in the industry report, is kind of the omni-channel unified experience. Maybe it makes sense just to, because we're on the topic, like really kind of touch on, what's the difference between a multi-channel approach and an omni-channel approach? I know we have a full-blown podcast on this, but just to kind of give people a little bit of a taste, if somebody wants to kind of do a 30-second recap of the difference between the two.
I mean, I can always talk about that. Essentially, right now, a lot of we'll talk about this too a little bit whenever we touch on kind of the back of office call center. But a lot of things right now, how they're set up, whenever you're communicating with a customer or a prospect, is set up as a multi-channel approach where you may be using touch points in social media or through email, but none of that message or messaging is persistent. They're not intertwined to one contact. It's all spread out. There's no strategy or real strategy behind it. Versus an omni-channel approach, you can really start removing those barriers between these channels, and that being mobile, SMS, web chat. It's all following a paper trail of sorts, where that messaging is persistent, it's personalized, and again, kind of what Jen was mentioning earlier. You can choose whatever channel you prefer, and that level of service will be consistent.
Yeah, I think that's the big key, right? Is that you're not missing any features regardless of what channel you're in. So if you choose WhatsApp as your channel of preference, you're able to do everything that you would be able to do by giving the contact center a call or by shopping on the website, right? So you're able to look at units, you're able to select a unit, you're able to check account balance, et cetera, right?
I think one of the interesting stats from the report is that for customers that use at least 3 different communication channels to contact a business, and that was 66%. And so that might be
that's crazy.
Like that 3 different channels, like that could be like a chat. It could be, they call you, it could be email.
I guess it makes sense when you put just those 3 there, right? Like somebody is likely to text you, they're likely to web chat you, and then, pick up the phone if they need to call, or add the 4th in there for email.
And so if each one of those experiences or one of those channels is kind of siloed, like I feel like that's kind of what we're talking about, like a multi-channel. Like you're responding to them in those channels, but if it's not a contextual, seamless experience, then I wouldn't call that omni-channel, right? And I think people are starting to expect more and more of that omni-channel of like, hey, if I text you, you're going to know who I am. You're going to have context to my problem, and if I need to call you or to talk to you, you're also going to know that, and you're going to have history of like what's been going on and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I also like kind of continuing along the communications route with omni-channel. One of the statistics that I really loved was straight from Google. Obviously, we integrate into Google Business Messages for a specific reason, and Google said 60% of smartphone users contact a business directly through their search results. So, you go to Google Maps and you are looking for self-storage near me, like that's a high percentage of likelihood that if you have that option turned on, somebody's going to come in, ask that size related question that they needed to get before they actually make the rental and choose. And so like, I thought that was really, really interesting, because I don't know that I've personally have done that in the past until we started to integrate, but like now that I have, from a professional perspective, like stake there. Even when I'm traveling, last week I was out in El Paso going to national parks and like looking for a restaurant or a coffee shop. I'm looking for that business that I can ask them, hey, are they open? Right. Because Monday was a holiday day. And so like maybe the business hours weren't updated on Google Maps. And like, I prefer to chat versus pick up a phone. And so, right from Google Maps, I'm like just checking to see, can I message this coffee shop to see if they're going to be open on Monday?
Yeah. And I have to jump in here to just give us a little bit of a shout out, because I was looking at our Google Business Communications or Google Business Messages, whichever way you prefer to call it. And they have a statistic of a merchant response rate that will go down the longer that it takes you to reply to those messages that Mason's referring to. And we're sitting at a 98%, which is just, great.
Almost perfect.
Almost. And it's because it was some sort of credential issue, but neither here nor there. Just stressing that the timeliness is important to the consumer and for the business.
Especially in that channel. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, you take the example that I just had. It's like I'm ready to shop right now. I'm ready to go buy coffee. I'm ready to, store whatever it might be. And I'm in Google Maps, like trying to solve that problem. And so if you can respond quickly, like the likelihood is that somebody immediately is coming to your facility.
Yeah, I think in that same vein too of just having the information up to date in your listings. So a couple things there, like if you have like incomplete listings, I think that looks poorly on you. Like people are going to say, hey, like this doesn't look legit, or I don't trust them. But also at the same time, if you have mismatched data across different listings, right? So like the hours are different, then they're definitely going to be like, something's fishy here. And they're going to want to even more find out, hey, are you actually open, or, can you help me?
Yeah, dude, that bugs me so much whenever I'm trying to reach a business or I'm like looking for a service, and I now need to look at Google Maps or whatever maps I'm using, and I need to go one by one. I look at the ratings. Like honestly, the cleanest one that's for stores, that's for restaurants, that's for if I want to get my nails done, like whatever that is. I look at reviews.
Pedicure, manicure, or both? Which one's your go-to there?
Manicures. Like I don't like people messing with my feet that much. And
it's extra. They have to pay you for that.
It's not that kind of podcast, Kyle. And so it is important. Like and even to the point, like as we wrap up, kind of reputation listing. It's also been, I think, a trend. Reputation management in general has really become this powerhouse, this driving force for a lot of operators, because the cat is out of the bag. There's been a lot of media coverage of self-storage as such an interesting asset class. That we are seeing people outside of the industry, people that have been in the industry for 30, 40 years, and now they're competing with people coming from tech or whatnot, that instead of buying a house, they're buying a self-storage facility, and they're getting all their buddies in the game and trying to retrofit it with the latest and greatest. And so those Google reviews at the end of the day are important. They are essentially the way to build trust with people that don't know your brand. And I think these public channels in general have kind of had that being Google reviews, that being, again, like social media, being able to respond to feedback and promptly, those Google reviews or Facebook reviews or messages. It's been really important to make you stand out from your competition across the street.
Yeah. we kind of skimmed over a lot of the interesting numbers and stuff. So I'll leave kind of a cliffhanger to say, like, go check out the actual report, go through those slides. There's some really cool stuff around online reputation, omni-channel. We didn't even dig too deeply into the website side of things. But going back to kind of a trend, which is probably like our last piece of the like online presence section here, is QR codes in 2020, whether you went to a restaurant or any other type of business, really made a comeback. And again, we have a whole podcast. Yeah, so back. We have a whole podcast on QR codes, so like go listen to that. But a trend that I've heard is like the frustration of operators this year with QR code systems due to like kind of the hodgepodge nature of, maybe during 2020, they're like, oh, we need a QR code. Like, they go to Google, they say QR code generator, they generate a QR code, and then they go post it. And then they're like, how the heck do I manage this thing? How do I change it? I want it to be more dynamic. Now I'm managing, 20 different QR codes, which actually led us to, building a whole product, right? For our operators and our customers, which is interesting. I don't know if anybody else has some like other, QR code related things that we want to talk about or that are in the report.
I mean, shout out to Kyle.
Seriously.
I know you led that product, and no, but I think
and Rodolfo, general, I know you want to say.
I know. That's where I'm going. So
here it comes.
The lead up has been real. Can
I get a drum roll, Kyle?
Oh yeah. Oh no, I just have
the wrong one.
It's the wrong
one. No, but it's definitely been super important, right? As going back to that shift to thinking about your customer journey, thinking about implementing technology and having the customer first in mind. The more touch points you've had, or they require, customers require more touch points now. And again, that merging between the digital and physical, which I like to call phygital.
There it is.
Thank you.
One more time. What's the word?
Phygital. They're like sexy. It's kind of sexy, right?
I'm gonna edit that part out for sure.
Yeah.
That was too good. That needs to stay. I need some of that in my life.
I'm trying to be serious here.
The first time we have Jen on the podcast, and this is how we treat her.
Sorry,
we give her this.
Is not
we talk about Rodolfo's feet.
Yeah,
and
I like how you went sexy. What are you, a hula dancer?
But okay. Let's bring us back. I think it is instrumental for operators to. It doesn't have to be QR codes, but to really hone in on not just investing all these digital products, but again, making sure also the technology that you're putting at your stores also communicates with each other, adds to that experience, because you're not only thinking about the online journey, but also the physical journey, kind of like we've touched in prior podcasts. And Mason, I know, loves to talk about kind of like the Apple experience. And so, with things like QR codes and whatnot, it's super valuable to also understand like the analytics behind it. Like on the physical, it gives you opportunity whenever somebody is in your physical like facility to actually start tracking what they need help with, or how many people left reviews, or how many people needed help, paying their bill. All these valuable data points that you can now you have access to. So moving along, what are some trends that we saw from the back of the office? And just for those who need a little bit more explanation, what I refer to that is more of like the tech stack behind running a facility, right? That could be FMSs, call center, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been going to trade shows since kind of the world started opening back up in 21. So, going on our third year now. So not a crazy amount of history with trends in this side of things, but really just in the last like 2 trade shows, we've seen a lot of new facility management system providers popping up, right? Or I've gotten outreach from, people overseas in different areas, interested in talking to us about our experience. So I think that's like one trend, is that there's just a lot of people that are coming in with new ideas to try to understand how to, improve upon the legacy systems that are out there. Another trend that we can probably dive a little bit deeper into, and is just around, I touched on it a second ago, but like, I think this is a big conversation topic right now, is the value-based pricing, the dynamic pricing, where those two engage or intersect with each other. Can you do both of those at the same time? How does that merge or meld with just the traditional like rate increase of X%? I think those are kind of some of the back of office style things that I've seen. And, obviously close to our ecosystem with Swivel is I think we have a lot of conversations with people that are utilizing different communication tools, right? I've seen one of our customers just switched over to Genesis. I know that we've talked to people using Ring Central. And so people may be getting more sophisticated. I've talked to a number of people that are building their own little stack with Twilio, right? I mean, one of the biggest REITs in the country, we're having conversation with, and I know they went out and are using Twilio's Flex Space. Is that what it's called? In order to build their contact center. And so I think we're seeing a lot of new kind of innovative tools in the back of office software. And this kind of goes back to the overarching trend of the report, or one of the overarching trends of the report, is that efficiency matters. And that's not just the customer efficiency. That's even almost more importantly, my back of office. How do we do processes? How is my team working? What tools does my team have? And so that's just me kind of kicking off this section of things that I know from conversations that we've had with business owners, operators, we're seeing pop up over the last 12 months.
Yeah, I will say that it's been really interesting to touch on some of the ones that you mentioned. Like the most recent one was kind of the communication or call center. I feel like call centers have been, BPOs and all that have been huge in not just this industry, but in general. But there has really been a shift from, it being solely a call center, which I want to distinguish, versus now a contact center, which there is a distinction to be mentioned there, because the contact center is now using all these different channels, kind of actually adding in an omni-channel strategy into how you are interfacing with leads and prospects and current tenants, and using all these different channels in order to provide that support to those customers. And I think, again, you have to, these are, I don't know what to call them, public facing channels, but kind of like service type channels, public facing channels. And at the end of the day, these are really important because they are directly tied to the value that you can provide, but also your reputation. And people are looking for that, right? That modern customer or consumer is looking for somebody to be able to interface with them and be able to get the answer or solution as quickly as possible. And it's not that always doesn't always happen through the phone, right? And I think as we continue to evolve and add more things, from what I'm seeing, obviously in our sector and what we do with Swivel, but also outside of it, there's a lot of potential to add to that modern call center or contact center to ensure that you're providing the best experience possible to those customers. So definitely we do mention a few of those in the report, just in general. I'm wondering if Jenna, you have anything from that side, data points or anything that you like to cover.
Yeah, I think it's funny, Mason, that you just mentioned Twilio Flex, because in my last position, I was kind of like an assistant project manager on building a whole contact center in Twilio Flex. And they do a great job of collecting data and doing reporting. And I'm sure a lot of the contact centers that are being used in self-storage do the same. But I never saw that data really get used. So, like, one interesting number, and it's hard to describe this chart, but check it out in our industry report, is that from our data set, majority of customer questions are coming through after 4 or 5 p.m. And so then looking at the swivel powered facilities, that we work with, not a lot of our operators have people available at 8, 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night. So thinking about using that data and seeing what types of questions are coming in. Is it mostly account management? Is it mostly sales? And I know that AI can be used in that space, or even just, from emails, analyzing that information. But I guess just honing in and stressing the importance of not only that collection, but the actual usage of the information that you're getting back from your own customers. Listen to them.
No, it's awesome. I mean, I think business happens at all hours, and I think that is one of the probably more interesting charts that we have in the our conversational data is the chart that you're referring to, Jenna, regarding it's basically it's on the x-axis is time, and on the y-axis is volume of communication, and just like how much volume happens at a time when most of operators in the country don't have human staffed to respond, right? Going back to some of the points that we just made in the previous section, it's like most customers are going to rent from the operator that can respond to them and service them via the channel of their choice. But in order to do that, you've got to have somebody there or have some system there that can help augment your team.
And also talking about trade shows, because this year's, or I guess last year, has been just my first one or two. But I heard a couple people mentioning like payment processing and trying to stay with the latest and greatest there. And like, just speaking from a personal experience of like, I'm using Apple Pay all the time. Like, I'm forgetting my wallet at home all the time. And if the self-storage industry customer is going to be my age, they're going to have that same experience. And from what I've seen, not a lot of operators accept Apple Pay or are integrated with Apple in that way. So that was something else interesting that I heard.
Don't get me started down the Apple train, Jenna. This is like one of those things that, just a quick little Apple Pay note, back when Apple Pay got launched, there were surveys and people out there sitting there going, oh, this is never going to take off. You can't get, X number of merchants don't accept Apple Pay. And like, you literally can't go anywhere today except for Walmart, maybe, which granted is the largest retailer in the country, but they have announced that they're going to adopt Apple Pay, and you can't go anywhere without that. And so I think that's an interesting thing, right? These technologies sometimes take a long-term view, but, if you're somebody that's kind of on the cutting edge or, paying attention to what consumers do, you're going to want to be there with them. And so Apple Pay is one of those ones that I think, as an operator, if your consumers are talking to you about digital payments, you need to start paying attention.
Wait a second. Were you saying that Walmart is not on the front edge of tech? Because I read an article the other day that their goal is to have 65% of their stores serviced by automation by 2027.
That is not what I was saying. I think Walmart is a large enough corporation that they have motivations that kept them from adopting Apple Pay for a long time. Okay. Because
also, don't get Mason started on Walmart, because he'll go down a rabbit hole there too.
Yeah, I moved to Bentonville in order to live in Walmart's backyard. So I actually do know quite a bit about Walmart and, interfaced with their, VP of digital technology for months at a time right before the pandemic hit. But I think they always try to push it. I mean, they know that they're competing against Amazon, right? And so they have a very strong partnership with Microsoft, right? And so because both of them have a common enemy in Amazon. And so I think they're always trying to push it. The payment thing specifically, Walmart, was trying to people to use Walmart Pay, which, just from a consumer perspective, there's a lot of barriers to Walmart Pay. I have a separate app. I've got to open up that app. I've got to scan a QR code. I've got to do all these things. Whereas like Apple Pay or even Android Pay is just so freaking easy, and consumers can use that everywhere. Walmart Pay, you can use it at one retailer. Apple Pay, Android Pay, you can use at every retailer. So I think that's what I was getting. It's not that Walmart isn't on the cutting edge. I think they just had ulterior motives, and I'm saying that the trend of digital payments has surpassed a high enough threshold that even Walmart at the size that they're at is kind of putting in the white flag and going, okay, we got to jump on board now too.
So moving right along, talking about trade shows and all that good stuff, I want to start focusing on kind of like boots on the ground, like actual facility operations, which we kind of started touching on. And we can always go back to certain things. I think this is where it kind of starts blending. But we've seen a lot of good stuff at trade shows related to the latest state-of-the-art hardware and software tools that you can start implementing in your facilities. Right. And so these tools are really helping operators streamline operations by, that being by reducing, manpower or operating costs, or driving kind of that renewed focus on improving that in-store experience. And so a lot of that could be, for the number one thing that comes to mind are like a lot of proliferation of smart tech related to like new mobile apps or smart locks, things like that. They're allowing customers more flexibility as to when they enter their facility or access their units. And something I wanted to kind of touch on whenever we're talking about value-based or dynamic pricing, it's been interesting because I'm also starting to see a trend of operators kind of combining these things and charging a premium for access to these higher end tools, or this, during business hours access versus 24-hour access. Kind of giving the opportunity for tenants to opt in, while at the same time using that as an upsell opportunity for the brand itself. So that's been really interesting to kind of see something that we see a lot in software kind of come in and entrench themselves in the boots on the ground side of things.
Rodolfo, you kind of touched on the larger trend of like unattended facilities, unmanned facilities. I think that's a general trend where the industry's going. We see a lot of operators going that way. But it's interesting because it seems like they're using different solutions, different tools to kind of do that, right? And one of them that we see a lot, or we're starting to see more of, is kiosks. And I'm curious, do we have an answer on whether kiosks work or whether customers like them? That's another one of those trigger things. I don't know if I want to get Mason going down that.
I was just about to say, like, this is like such a rabbit hole, because I think there are certain scenarios that like kiosks are amazing, right? Like we talk about Walmart, like self-checkout, that's a kiosk solution, right? And I don't know how out of the four of us, like how many of you guys prefer self-checkout versus like going to like a human checkout at the grocery store?
It depends on how many items
100.
I have.
That's valid. So that's a good thing. And then, even take that a step further, the Amazon, like walk in, walk out, right? Like you're not even, I mean, that's maybe not a kiosk because you're not going up to something, but that's a form of a kiosk. Rodolfo.
No, just adding to this too, though. Yes, opinions aside, you really need to hone in on like the use case, what you're using it for, and whomever you're interfacing with, just understanding essentially, hey, does it integrate to what it needs to integrate to, the maintenance around it, etc. I've seen, I hear for some people, one of the use cases is lock dispensing, which if it works to upsell, great. But to your point earlier about when we were referencing Twilio, I also see a lot of operators kind of MacGyvering their own type of kiosk creation with an iPad, and connecting
that's the question, right?
Yeah, and now with the advent of another rabbit hole, video, and video chat or live video, it's just interesting. There's a combination of these type of kiosks, and there's now a bunch of iterations as to how you can get that same outcome.
Yeah, I think the lock dispensing is an interesting one, right? Because like one of the main comparisons that we hear in the self-storage industry as a, hey, kiosk work is the airline industry, right? And if I'm not checking a bag, I don't need to use a kiosk, right? The only time I ever use a kiosk when I'm flying is when I need to go get my bag tag. Now, that bag tag is awesome, right? Like to be able to go up to it and print it out. I love that. I can just go drop it off and make sure that my, the thing that I'm shipping is under the allotted weight and size. So like the example you just gave around the lock dispensing, that's a similar thing, right? Like you're dispensing something. One of them's obviously a tag, the other one's a lock. I think that's interesting, but like in almost every other use case, right? Like take shopping. I'd probably be of the school of thought that like I probably would rather, like as I'm shopping, like scan all of my items on my phone and just pay digitally and walk out. Similar, or have one of the Amazon style, I forget what they call that technology, but like where you're like walking around the store, you're putting stuff in your shopping cart, you've got a credit card on file, you like walk out, and like the only thing that's dispensed on that is the the receipt, right? Which I'm told 90% of the time at a grocery store, I tell them I don't need my receipt anyway. An email version is great. It does its thing. I didn't really need to like have anything dispensed to me at that point in time. So I think that's interesting. Each one of those kiosks, right, are probably thousands of dollars of hardware to dispense a bag tag or a lock. The iPad, the QR code to, video, whatever that other solution is. To me, that seems kind of like a middle ground. The only exception to that is if part of the brand that me as an operator am trying to create is this like high tech feel. And when you walk in, say you've got like walls of screens and the thing does facial recognition and it's greeting me and it is just this like holy wow moment. Like if that's what you're trying to build, I could see that because the value is not in the customer experience, not in what the customer value you're creating, right? You're not dispensing something. It's in like that brand build piece of the puzzle, right? Like that goodwill that you're creating, the thought that the next time that a consumer shops, they're going, man, that experience that I had at, storage operator Hoover Properties, like that screen was really freaking cool, whatever. Like that was part of the brand that you're portraying. So I could see that there.
I think it's interesting you brought up the airline use case. And my take on that is that I don't necessarily think that they're trying to like be this like innovative brand, like this technology thing, like fully automated. It seems to me like that was just to kind of speed up the process. So like they're cutting out a lot of the manual time that the agent has to deal with.
100%.
Like when someone goes up to the desk and they have to like ask for your confirmation number, your boarding pass, or whatever, and you're doing all this stuff. So they're kind of like getting a lot of that out of the way, so that once you have your bag tag, they check your ID, they put on their thing, and they go.
And the foot traffic the foot traffic at an airport is, eons above what foot traffic is at a storage facility too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I kind of see it kind of more of a hybrid approach of like, they're not trying to automate the whole process, but they have this really, they kind of focus on one big pain point, and if they can speed that up, then the efficiency of their whole process really goes up. And I think there's a benefit for the customer as well, because I think, every time I've used one of those, the process is pretty smooth. I maybe there for a minute and a half at the screen, I'm tapping some stuff, it prints out a thing, I stick it on the bag, I'm like, cool, I can drop it off and go. Right.
Yeah.
And I also kind of
Rodolfo would be like, that was the pinch point, right, of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Outside of like going through the security line at TSA, but that's the pinch point.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And so I think it's as a self-storage operator, maybe you don't have to think about, I'll have to automate everything, right? But like, what's that main thing that's like going to take your business, going to like 10x either your efficiency or your customer service or experience or any kind of business goal that you have?
We should do a full-blown like kiosk episode, because we haven't done that yet, and like bring some operators that utilize kiosk, or maybe you're doing some hybrid style stuff onto the podcast to do that. So, stay tuned for another episode.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm curious, just to kind of change topics here, like around like kind of smart entry options, or even smart locking units and stuff. Has anybody here, like outside of a trade show, gotten to experience this in their facilities?
I haven't.
I've used my old fashioned padlock.
Yeah. Mason, didn't you have like a Bluetooth one at
Totally.
Public?
Yeah. So when I stored at Public for a little while, like, they have a generic app that it was clunky, man. I'm going to tell you, it was clunky. It just, the technology, talking about pinch points and automating, it like felt forced. Now, the thing that I didn't have to do is remember a gate code, right? I didn't have to remember a gate code, so that was nice. The technology implementation was mediocre. And it's not their technology, but the problem is that like you'd go up to the, say the gate, like you might not be within range of it. Even if I'm sitting in my car, I'm like, how much closer can I get to this daggum thing? And then really the problem is that I'm storing at a multi-location facility, right? So I go to the gate, I have to use my Bluetooth to open it. It takes a good, 5 seconds. That gate opens. I go park my car. I need to go up to the sliding glass doors. I need to use it there. Again, a good 5 to 10 seconds. I go through the sliding glass doors. I grab a dolly. I come back out. I load the stuff from my car into the dolly. Now I'm going back through the sliding glass doors, use it again. I go to the elevator. I have to use it again. So now, even before I've gotten to my unit, I've sat there and wasted a minute and a half just using Bluetooth. And again, going, oh, well, am I close enough to the keypad dialer or not? Whereas like if I, like today, I have a store at a location that like my code is really simple for me to remember. And because I was able to edit it, and like I can just go up, takes me 5 seconds. It probably takes me a lot less than that. It takes me like half of a second to punch in the couple of numbers, and the pound sign, the thing goes in. I didn't have to pull my phone out of my pocket. I don't have to put my phone back in my pocket. And so this is what I touched on earlier. Like I'd love to have like a digital key like they do for homes now, that's like integrated into my Apple Wallet or Android Wallet if you're in that system. And it just like knows that I'm there because it's not using, old school Bluetooth, probably, I don't know what Bluetooth version we're on now, but the newer versions are just a lot more efficient, a lot quicker, etc. That was my little rant about Bluetooth and access. Get off my soapbox and move on now.
I have a question. Talking around smart tech, physical presence, is there anything that you see coming in the future? Like when we're talking about Bluetooth and automated locks, I'm like, are we going to get to the point where I can just walk up and it sees my pupil and I can get into my unit?
Ooh,
or
talking about future, I love it.
I did see in the lab notes, I watched that little video that was included. and I and I saw an AI excavator. So thinking of like around building facilities or installing doors, like are we going to have AI forklifts here in the near future? What do you guys think?
That's a good question of like what's exciting to you. I think the thing that I just touched on of like, quick entry. I don't care what the technology necessarily is that allows for me to like walk in and walk out like really seamlessly is there. When it comes to like retina scans or like facial recognition, I think it needs to be one, cheap enough to like mass install. Say if you had a portfolio of 100 plus locations, you need to be able to do that at a fraction of the cost. I mean, cameras today are not that expensive. The software side of it is not that expensive. But somebody needs to integrate into the doors and into the gates, etc. I'd say that's kind of like my biggest wish list outside of like the digital payment. Maybe being able to go in and like self-purchase tape or a lock without talking to somebody.
All right, Jenny, you struck gold here because I'm going to give you $1 billion idea. In case we don't build it ourselves.
$1 billion with a B? With a B?
Yeah, bro. Okay. Yeah. So there's two things. And I don't know, maybe they work together, maybe it's completely different. But I do suspect you're talking about an AI excavator. The first thing that came to mind was those humanoid robots or whatnot, or even what's that one that we saw at TechCrunch that one time, Mason, which was like this oval shape thing that was like a security mall, like a I don't know, remind me of like Paul Mart. Do you guys know that movie? Yeah,
man, I had so many conversations with that company because Walmart was employing them in multiple locations when I was in Bentonville.
That is so funny.
It didn't work out.
Yeah. All right. Well, good to know. We've talked about drones and all that. That's cool. That might be something that we see. But talking about my wish list. All right, self-storage in general. It happened to me. It's so difficult. I had a facility for 2 years where I forgot what the hell was in that facility. I was moving a lot, and I just needed a spot. And if there was a way to easily capture the inventory that's in my unit and then be able to have some type of on-demand service where I can schedule a pickup and it gets delivered to me, I think that would be amazing. I know there's a lot of valet type services now, etc., but adding a layer of technology in there where it takes inventory and I can just pick items that I need, and then I can now store new items in there. I don't know, but I thought that would take self-storage to the next level.
Tell me you're a millennial without telling me you're a millennial.
So you're thinking of this a la carte, not wipe the whole thing out.
Yeah, I don't need to go to my unit if I don't have to. And it's interesting because I see
it's basically like Amazon, like their facilities, like their distribution centers, where it's like they have these robots.
For your own item.
Yeah, exactly. And so your stuff is stored with a bunch of other people's stuff, and whatever's the most easy way to like.
They tried. Somebody's tried that.
Yeah, I think the unit economics just don't work out.
Yeah, I forgot the company. I know I met one of their VPs of marketing in Miami when I was living there at a networking event and stuff. But
with robots.
I don't know if they were using robots or not. But
so instead of DoorDash, you're looking for StoreDash.
Ooh. Hold on, I'm
going to
check out that domain.
I'm going to get that domain right now. Let's go get it.
The thing that I would say...
This is why we invite Jenna to the podcast.
Yeah. Coming up with the ideas, the big questions and the big ideas. Yeah. It's interesting that you talked about like a pinch point in the airline industry, Kyle, because it got me thinking that like one of the biggest pains is just moving in and out of a facility. right? And so like you talked about Amazon warehousing, like having a dolly that's like an automated dolly that can, maybe not unpack my car, but like I can place things on it and it takes it to a specific unit and unpacks it. Or, maybe being able to take a picture of my car load, it has a camera somewhere in my unit, or I take a picture of my unit and it's like telling me the optimal, pattern. Like that's something that I personally like really enjoy doing. Is like my mom used to always tell me when we were going on like road trips that like I used to play Tetris with all of our like luggage to make sure that it all fit. And I like to do that in a storage unit. Is like, how do I optimize my storage unit perfectly? But I'm a weird person in that sense. Like not everybody's playing Tetris with their stuff that they're putting into a storage unit. And so I think something around like helping people optimize their space, or transport things like another, like I store a lot of woodworking equipment in my storage facility right now. And like my planer is probably like 80 pounds at like minimum. I'm a decently in good shape guy, but I hate picking that thing up and down and like moving it around just to like have something that would help me like pick up heavy items. I think that would be something pretty cool. Again, like how much does that scale? Like how close are we to like that being economically viable? Those are all big questions that the answer is probably no right now, but those things, I could see a day when.
If you want to learn more about the 5 levels of automation, that's I feel like
an episode on that too.
Yeah, that kind of ranks somewhere around there. And CES, if you haven't checked out our lab notes, there's a video on CES, and they cover a few little helpers or things, gadgets that could help with that too. So it's just interesting.
All right,
Anyway.
I think that's probably a wrap for today. Some key takeaways from this section of our report. One, customer has to be at the center of, your universe when you're making decisions. Things that allow for you to be going between the digital and the physical world.
Digital.
Rodolfo. Oh, Kyle came in
but
there.
No, he has to do it all sexy.
This guy. Phygital. I forgot how I did it earlier. I forgot.
And then figuring out ways to automate the facility. And I think with Rodolfo's Phygital, we're going to just put that on repeat and say goodbye.
Until next time, thanks for tuning in. Leave a comment, feedback, question for next time. Later.